Hello everyone, I'm Justin Wong and today I'm going to be talking about my Halloween costume, also known as V1. So my costume design was a character based off of the video game called ULTRAKILL, which happened to pop up on my YouTube recommendation around August. So that was one of my ideas for the costume design. I also had 4 other costume designs, which I also put on a Google document, and I got around 20 people to vote which one they thought was the best, and they agreed with me that the one that I chose, which is V1, was the best decision out of the 5. So let's talk about the costume. Yeah. So for the costume, there are 2 main parts. There is the body armor part, and there's something I will show later on in the video. Let's talk about the general wearing process. Like, how would I wear it? Under the costume, under all these like foam plates, I made these by EVA foam, as you can tell, as well as like cardboard and construction paper. And I did a lot of spray painting and just regular painting as well. As you can see, there's lots of Velcro strips, and you can find these really on any plate of armor that I wore. Like there, I had 2 pieces of clothing that I'd wear. I'd wear a black shirt, and I'd also wear a pair of black pants that would fit tightly to my skin. One of the issues I encountered while making this costume is how it would look in real life. If you were to search up V1, the ultra cold character that I was trying to model my costume off of, you would see that the costume is actually very slim compared to someone like me. So a issue that I encountered was how I could make this costume look as close to the real thing as possible while being, well, in real life. So to do that, I wore a pair of very tightly fitted pants, and I also wore a black compression shirt. And I covered myself with Velcro so that they could stick to really any armor pieces I could, which you can see I use a lot of for every single armor piece. Let's go over how I made the individual armor pieces. So what I do, right, if I were making this shin plate right here, I would have this big piece of paper and I would fold it on my leg like so and have someone trace it for me. And after that, we would cut out the traced piece of paper and we would put it on a foam sheet so we can cut it out. And this produced these very well-fitted pieces for my body to be. Yeah. So as you can see, I did that for every single piece of body armor. Some of them were more complex. For example, this piece right here. This actually took me a couple of tries to get through. As you can see, there's like multiple cuts here. And I did a lot of trimming and stuff and editing because this would wrap around my arm in like some awkward way where it would stick out of my forearm and around my triceps. So for every year when I'm making costumes, I go through an initial design process, and this year was no different. So if you were to search up the V1 character, you would see that the character has these 8 large yellow wings, for example, right here, which I made. I'll explain how I made these later. In the early design stages, I would take these cardboard cutouts and see how it would stick onto my back and if it looked good and if it would fit my body. When I was starting off making this costume, I went through an initial design process, and for this year it was no different. One of the greatest challenges I had to overcome during this costume making was how I was going to make this swing pack. If you see this, it's actually a very complex piece, especially when you're creating it from scratch without any inspiration. So what I would do is I would make these cardboard cutouts and try to stick them onto my body. For example, this was the plate that would be stuck onto my back. And I would see if it looked good, if it fit well, and consider all these other factors. And for the wing movement, I went through multiple prototypes of what I would like the wing to look like when it was moving. So this was my finalized version. I would have two linear actuators here, and linear actuators are basically motors that have this rod connected to them that moves the rod up and down. I would have these connected to something like this and stick out to some sort of gear. I would be connected to a first wing segment. So when this got pulled down, it just came up with it. But there's more to it just that. If you look at the small gear, right, instead of being fixed, it actually turns with the movement. So when this is being turned, this doesn't just stick through like this. If my hand was the second wing segment, it would go like this, so that it wouldn't just be fixed. I wanted to include this because it made the wings look much more natural, and I was correct as I tested this on the final product, and it did look very nice. Now I'm going to be talking about how I made each individual wing. So using AutoCAD, a online design software, I was able to create these individual 3D printed parts, which, as you can see, appear on every single wing segment. I'd have two of these stuck together through pegs and slots, which they would just slide through. It was very easy to put together. And I would have these spaces for my LEDs. Another thing that I included was that the main control panel. So on this chess piece, I put 3 circuits, right? 2 of these are for lighting, and 1 of these is for the wings movement. Let's go over the lighting. This one is very simple. It controls the lighting for the chess piece. As you can see, as I put this battery in to the holder right there, the LEDs light up. I used yellow vinyl, also used for sign shops. It's used by sign shops to make signs, and it's some very high quality material, which I chose specifically because of its quality. And I put hot glue under the vinyl so that the light could be more dispersed. The next piece of lighting that I'd like to talk about is this right here. This controls the lighting for the whole wing pack. Surprisingly, you can run 102 LEDs just on 2 AA batteries, as you can see right here. If I just... yeah. The final thing that I'd like to talk about for circuitry is this piece right here. So as I said, this controls the movement of the wings. I'll do a demonstration right now. If I were to connect these using, okay, the video isn't sponsored, but I used something called snap circuits in order to do all the circuit wear. So as the name suggests, they'd have these little nubs of some sort that you could just snap onto whatever circuit you want. So this was very convenient for me. So 3, 2, 1. It has a little bit of a difficulty with ground movement because, well, there's friction against the wings, but in an actual setting where I'd be wearing this on my back, it actually looks very nice when it's opening up. So let's talk about the finalized mechanism that I put on the wing pack. As you can see here, there are 2 linear actuators which I've zip tied to a backboard. And next to these are this metal sheet that I drilled 8 holes for each individual wing for an axis of movement. So I would put a peg within each hole so that this wing could be swinging around that pivot point. In this wing, I have, if you go here, let's go here. Actually, yeah, I put string in here, which simulated the chain movement that I showed with the Lego pieces earlier. So when this moved up, the chain or the string would go inward, which also pulled the wing inward as well. That's how I made the motion. And it looked very clean. During prototyping, I did many 3D printed parts for trial and error. And this is the majority for lighting. This spray paint is for testing what color I liked before I actually got the wall paint. But as you can see here, these holes are where the LED slots were supposed to go. So if you were to go to, for example, this beam, if you were to go to this beam would have 8 LEDs or so, just along these holes, and each hole had 1 LED. And I played around with how wide the holes were. For example, this one was a failed trial because the light would only be let through like this and it wouldn't be properly dispersed everywhere, which I'd hoped for. So yeah, it took around, how many trials is this? 8 trials just to figure out what the lighting would look like at the end. Yeah, in total I'd have around, I have a whole tray of errors that I actually went through, and it's probably like a combined total of 1 kilogram of 3D printed errors. So yeah, lots of material wasted, but in the end it was to make this, which I'm happy with. So let's talk about what I'm gonna make next year. So my second voted option was a human candy dispenser, which I would have this big box of, well, candy containing spheres, which would roll along my body into some sort of like pipe or carnival styled mechanisms, which would then let this ball of candy be rested in my hand so I can just give it to someone. It's like a vending machine, if you could say. So I'm looking forward to making that next year. I have some very good designs. I did a lot of pre-designing for Halloween, and the costume which was going to make next year is already here. So which is human candy dispenser. And I drew lots of schematics for parts and how the electronics would work, and even a color palette. So I'm very looking forward to making this next year. See you in 2024.